Josh's House of Nerd Podcast.
Greetings, Nerd Nation. I'm Josh, and I welcome you to the podcast. Grab a cold evergreen goblet of blue milk and make yourself comfortable here at my House of Nerd. For tonight's sponsor of Josh's House of Nerd, are you dreaming of purchasing the perfect dream home? Then Home Dreaming Inc. is for you. For the low price of your mind, we can architect you the perfect dream home for you in limbo to last forever. Home Dreaming Inc., where your home is not a reality, but a possibility. Not a sponsor.
Train's not included.
Train's not included. I tried to incorporate the train part, and I couldn't figure it out.
We'll just throw in the legal background. This home is not a real home. This home will not protect you in case of fire.
That's right.
Side effects are possible knifing.
All right, for tonight's movie, we are picking from a movie that I gave to these two gentlemen. And by the way, we just have John and Crit on here tonight. Just John and Crit.
Just.
And
fall back.
And for for the topic of this week, it is heist movies still. For the month, I should say, not the week. And the movie of the week is Inception that we picked, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ellen Page, Marion Collard, Cillian Murphy, Michael Caine, Ken Wannabe, Tom Hardy, Tom Berenger, and Dilip Rao. And I only bring that up is because that is a crazy good cast. Those guys are amazing. And let's get talking about this fantastic movie. In my opinion, anyway.
So the first note I made is going over the IMDb page. They give you plot keywords, right? Like these taglines, dream, subconscious, ambiguous ending. But at the end of the plot keywords, there's one called psycho thriller. And I'm just like, what? So apparently they categorized this film, or at least IMDb, enough people have said it's a psycho thriller. And I don't know what you guys feel about that.
A psycho thriller?
Can you give me the definition of a psycho thriller?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a definition on it. Hold on.
Can't set us up like that.
I'm going down the rabbit hole. No, it doesn't give me a definition, but it pulls up other movies like The Silence of the Lambs and Zodiac and Seven. I don't know how Inception got wrapped into these things.
Yeah, those seems more like
a psycho. Well, I think psycho might be short for psychological thriller.
Yeah,
and that makes sense in sense that Inception deals with the mind. I mean that's the entire setting of the movie. So
Mal is pretty psycho too, though. Not that she's necessarily not really the main antagonist.
Yeah, kind of. And then at the same time, she's a manifestation of Cobb. So that's I don't know.
Isn't it? I mean, isn't his wife like a manifestation of like almost his guilt? I mean, that's kind of what I get. Is
sort of.
He can't like forgive himself for basically in doing Inception on her.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ultimately what it was, that he can't forgive himself for twisting her mind down in limbo to want to come back to their children, and it backfired on him.
Well, because the way he did it, I mean, that he basically gave her the idea that reality isn't real. Yeah. So in order to get her out of it, but the problem is that, like you said, it just stays. And once it's there, you can't really get rid of it. So, when she goes finally gets up to the level of reality, she doesn't think it is reality because that idea is stuck in her head.
I loved how that dynamic made DiCaprio a reluctant antagonist, because he absolutely was. He was the driving force behind a lot of this film's antagonistic scenes where where conflict suddenly blooms from an outside source. I love the idea of a reluctant antagonist, and especially one who's also playing the role of the protagonist. I think it was a very unique tightrope they walked, and I think they walked it very well.
Well, it's very shocking when you walk into a scene there, and he doesn't even know the bad stuff. It's his own mind that's generating it, and he has no clue. I mean, just a perfect example, like you guys brought up a minute ago, the train. He had no idea. It's coming from his mind, and he had no idea that it was going to be something that was, going to pop up. And then, some of the other things like his wife in the very beginning where she turns him over to Saito. I mean, all of that stuff just kind of popped up out of nowhere. And yet, he's trying to be the good guy, and yet his conscience is the bad guy. And he has no idea it's coming up. I thought that was so interesting that he had never had any clue of something that was going to happen himself, even though it was his own conscience, bringing that story to front.
It's an interesting problem in that it kind of alludes to the idea that, you don't know where thoughts come from. Like you think you are the genesis of thoughts, and it's possible that you are, and that you're in control and stuff like that. But at the same time, you aren't necessarily in control. Like you don't get to control every thought that your conscious mind has to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly you smell something and that triggers a memory, and so that was totally outside of it. And then you're thinking about something totally different from, whatever is in front of you at hand. And you didn't really have any control over that situation, and so the idea that, in this movie that your subconscious is a dangerous thing, and that you won't have control of it. I thought it's really interesting. Like it's kind of pop sci in the sense as it's pretty surface level when it comes to the complexities of that, I think. But at the same time, like to realize that in a action thriller with the set pieces and everything else like that just makes it a fantastic movie.
It kind of reminds me of Magicians, how they somehow they plant the idea without you really knowing that they planted the idea in their mind, and that, like a number or a card you're supposed to guess. I don't know how they do it. Sometimes it's called like a force,
it's a magic trick.
Yeah. And it's all psychological. It's a pattern they follow that they know it's going to somehow get embedded into somebody's mind, and they'll be able to pull it out somehow. This movie kind of reminds me, or makes me think of that type thing of Magician.
Yeah.
Speaking of those set pieces that you just brought up, I mean, this movie is just full of them.
Spared no expense.
I mean, it was just amazing. Okay. I mean, even from the very beginning, from that set piece where they're showing him looking for Saito at the very, very beginning. I mean, that house that he's in is just
great.
Oh, it is so amazing. I mean, it just makes me think of like sandalwood, when I took my trip to Korea, I just, all of a sudden I started smelling this, or when I went to Japan too, those wood smells that you smell in those places.
Yeah. I think the fun part about that specific scene is when Mav turns to, or Mal, what is her name? I can never.
Mal.
Mal, yeah. Mal.
Mal. I think he says Mal all the time.
Yeah, Mal. So when Mal turns to Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character and goes, "Oh, we're in your dream. This is totally you." Like the whole setting is. So he's like a secret weeb or something, because kind of how the setting is set up, because it's not like a real castle looks like that, or in Japan or something like that. So that's kind of. I thought that was funny. That was at the very beginning of the movie, but yeah. No,
it just reminded me of this hotel I stayed at when I was in Korea. Like it's exactly what it did. It was like wood like everywhere. Like everything was made out of this like nice, smooth sandalwood and stuff. Oh, it was just so impressive and smelled wonderfully. And that's what triggers me every time I see that movie at that part, because it is absolutely beautiful. And I can't believe that's actually a set.
Yeah.
That's not a real place, which just blows my mind.
Like I said, they didn't, they were like, let's do this. And then they just didn't let anything get in the way of them doing it.
Absolutely. You know what I love about this scene too, by the way? I wrote this down. This is in this very beginning, without doing a lot. I never really noticed this before until this time, and I've seen this movie a ton of times, but I'm not analyzing it when I'm watching it, other times.
Right.
They establish the time, like how time works, very subtly within this scene, and how gravity works, and because how like there's different things going on outside, and yet it's affecting them in the dream. I thought that was really interesting how subtly they kind of started to allude towards that and give you information that that was informing the movie that early on without even saying a dang thing about it.
And I wonder if the explanation that happens much later in the movie is because this movie's so long, we need to make sure the audience is reminded, like, that what a kicker is again, what a that things outside will affect the inside the dream. Because they did establish that. I think you're right, very well at the beginning of the movie without necessarily saying it. But
Agreed.
then again, they pointed out later, during the collection of the team and stuff like that, and during the first part of the Inception. So yeah, it was kind of interesting that they decided to go back and re-explain it again.
And I'm surprised they did that. That actually kind of surprises me. But at the same time, they do go into a little bit more depth. And I agree with you. I think they almost have to, because and they're using Ellen Page's character to kind of be the person they can explain all this to. And it's okay, because they do go more into depth of like how many minutes and seconds there is, when every level that you go down. And it is different when we go into the last dream because of the drug they're using. Mm-hmm. But the overall idea of when we're doing this normally, this is the way that it works. Right. 5 minutes is an hour, like what they did with Ellen Page's character. Things like that. I kind of think they had to kind of do that, even though, well, I don't think they had to, but I think it was good that they did, because it gives you more of a reality. I know this for a fact that this might be something to do with maybe the way that the studio was kind of treating Christopher Nolan on this. They were being really hard on him because they thought that this movie was too hard to explain. I read an article that said that he had to prove to them before they would greenlight money that that the audience could tell between the different layers, like absolute different, there was no doubt in their mind what layer of what dream that they were in.
Thus the different film grain, or not film grain, but coloration, and the very radical different set pieces.
Yeah. They basically did all of the Star Warses in one. Go because that's what George Lucas did. To set them apart. He did the different colorations and different scenes. That's what they did here at Inception.
Yeah, because they had the top level, which was street,
and raining.
Warehouse. Street, warehouse, and raining.
Yeah.
Which I do like the kind of explanation of that, is that the chemist needed to use the restroom, like before he went under, it didn't go. So that's why it was raining on the first level. That
made me laugh. I never caught on to that till this time either, that it was because he had to go pee.
and then the second one's in the hotel. Mm-hmm. And then the third one's in the fortress on the side of the mountain. So yeah.
Yeah. And
then of course the limbo, which is, totally different.
Yeah. There was absolutely a thing. I was reading an article just right before we got on that the only reason the actors could tell what scene they were in and what level they were in is by their clothes. They would just look at their clothes and be like, all right, I guess we're in the snow level now.
Well, that one would be, I would think, obvious, but yeah.
I think we're at the hotel. I don't know what I need this parka for.
Yeah.
This must be a dress-up party or something.
It's a little warm, isn't it? Man. Oh, but anyways, yeah, those such good things. I just love how this movie is put together, with all of this.
Well, I love the practical effects they threw in there, and how much of what they did was practical. The hallway scene, the zero gravity hallway scene
that they built in a rotating
system. Yeah, they could have taken the route of doing CGI. They went practical in a lot of cases, and I think it was the right choice, and it turned out really, really well. And that's not just me hating on CGI, because this is a time and age where they could have done CGI really, really well.
Well, that's an interesting question then. Who did it better, Inception or Doctor Strange, the city folding?
The city folding?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a hard question.
That's why I like it.
I think Inception, and I think the reason for me was subtle, because the city was moving slowly. It had the weight behind it. It's just like the difference between Pacific Rim and Pacific Rim 2. Pacific Rim, the robots. No, it's a huge
choice.
difference. Well, okay, so in Pacific Rim 2, it's great because the robots are moving slower. They have weight behind them. You feel that weight, and you feel how massive they are. And in Pacific Rim 2, they're like running around like kids, and you don't get that same sense of
there's
majesty.
no sense of weight. Yeah. Okay,
I think that's where Inception came in. And
that is an interesting choice.
I would actually add to that, John. I actually fully agree with you. I think Inception did it better, and here's the reason: they're both CGI. We clearly know that, but I think
hopefully they didn't.
Well,
bend the
I don't know.
City over on top of
or
itself
just get a
and
massive
defy
mirror.
physics.
I think it looks more realistic in Inception, for what John was saying, but it's. I think they could fudge a lot when it came to some of the mind bending, building bending things the way they did it in Doctor Strange. It was easier to hide flubs if there was any, because of how so many things were like mirror imaged and prisms and mirrored things, and I thought that was just so much more done so much better because it's completely in the shot all the time, and you're seeing the whole thing. They couldn't screw that up very well.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I did cringe in that scene, though. I always cringe when they're walking towards the edge and then they're suddenly walking on the edge.
You do
every
too?
time. That one just feels... They
feels
didn't
weird.
get it right. They didn't get it right.
No, they didn't. I don't feel like they did either.
And I don't know how they would have gotten it right, but it feels so off, and not in an off-putting, oh, wow, this is kind of neat way, but oh no, this is janky kind of way.
What you're saying is they should have taken a book from the end of Labyrinth and how he was walking through the MC Escher.
Yeah, that's true. And he just whoop. It makes that sound too. Whoop sound. You have to do that.
What's crazy about that entire scene is there are so many, it's such a mix of CGI. And this is one of the things I do love about Inception, where I think the CGI, Christopher Nolan doesn't like to use CGI if he doesn't have to. He really likes everything in camera. But the whole part of when they're sitting on when they're sitting there having coffee and he's showing Ariadne that she's in a dream and all this stuff, and all of a sudden she starts freaking out and everything starts exploding. Like, most of that's practical. He had like nitrogen cannons and fire, and that was real. And then they just had some guy go back post-production and basically double it
and do the popcorn stuff that
they're
doing. Yeah.
That's all they did. Most of that is actually practical in camera, which just blows my mind because it's so well done. Just like many things in this movie, just so well done. And that's, I think that's a whole thing right there is just again, another wonderful set piece, which I can't tell if that's really Paris or not. I have no idea if that's a set or not. It sure looks like Paris and stuff like that, but it's done really, really well, in my opinion. Again, another wonderful set piece.
Yeah, I think like Crit said, they spared no expense.
No, and what I like the most about a lot of this movie is how they did give it to you in layers, how they did give it to you so that you could understand. They gave you a little bit of information all the time, kind of building upon the idea, kind of foreshadowing, but building on the idea that, Cobb's not all there. Mm-hmm. Cobb's struggling. He doesn't know if he's in reality either, even though he knew more than his wife did, and how they keep building on that and how it keeps expanding on that as he goes through the story of how he's kind of losing himself in all this dreaming. And I think Ellen Page is kind of there, kind of keeping him kind of grounded a little bit, even though she's kind of being the watcher over the whole group and stuff. So I mean, that's I thought that was an interesting way. Christopher Nolan just has this wonderful way of just, I think, telling a story. He's
Ariadne's character is an interesting character to me because in the beginning, her motivations aren't necessarily clear. And even, I mean, yeah, she wants to dream. Yeah, she wants to, now that she's tasted the dream, she's going to come back and get more. But what do you guys think are her true motivations for being part of this team? What kept her there after getting stabbed by Maul?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, I think the key for me is the scene, that final scene right before they go on the plane, where she's saying, you either tell Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, which I can't remember his name, or you need to take me with you because someone needs to be there. So and she even tells him later when they're in the first level at the warehouse, she goes, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for them. So that's kind of the motivation for her, is to protect the rest of the team from Cobb's instability.
Is that you think that's the only thing keeping her with the team? Because it's hard to know, other than, the experience of dreaming, which she could do without being part of the team. Is that the only thing keeping her with the team?
Can she do it without being part of the team?
She can go to Morocco.
Can she go to Morocco? I don't know. I mean, that the amount of
there's ambiguity in whether or not dreaming happens normally.
I mean, she's the audience insert, I think. Like, she's not the protagonist. She's there to get explained to, and to, I mean, everything that she does, she acts upon the plot, is almost done off screen. It's mostly them explaining how the system works and how she needs to deal with stuff and stuff like that. But she doesn't do too much, in the movie, except for, she obviously is, she's there to witness on part of the audience what's happening, and remind the audience about certain pieces of it by reminding Cobb about certain pieces of, danger and, if you do this, this will happen, that type of stuff.
You think she's more of there to just advance the story?
I think she's there as an audience insert.
Yeah.
So every time you could basically say, every time they're explaining something to her, they could just look directly into the camera at the audience and explain it to the audience. Like, if you look at what they're saying to her, they are saying to the audience, this is how it works. This is what you need to look out for. This is what you need to do. And when she's, reminding, Cobb of, this isn't real, or, you need to look out for this type of scenario or something like that. That's really kind of the writer or director talking to the audience also. I know it's a little weird in concept because she's not always the audience insert, but I think that's her her as a character. That's her primary function.
I think she's also the vehicle for Cobb's redemption, because without Ariadne, Cobb doesn't redeem himself. He doesn't get redeemed. And I don't think he would have been able to do that without Ariadne's, without her influence, without her being there. So I think other than being like the audience insert, which I absolutely agree with, I think she's also the vehicle for his redemption. I don't think that redemption arc happens without having Ariadne's or Ellen Page's character there.
Well, and the entire scenario falls apart if she's not there anyway. So, like, right. I'm not saying she isn't important to the plot.
No, and I didn't.
But I think her primary function is audience insert for the majority of the film.
I would agree with that. She's definitely the audience and stuff. She is critical. I mean, she is the architect. She is the one that's making these dreams, because Cobb can't anymore, because he's afraid that, Maul will come in and completely foil whatever they're doing. But at the same time, she's, I don't know. Yeah, she's there to just, I feel, move along the story a lot of times. That's interesting that you brought up that, she's there for her redemption, or for his redemption, though. I'm trying to kind of think about that a little bit more and stuff. I never thought of her as that person. before this, helping him along to kind of almost poke the bear into going where he doesn't want to. He knows he should go, but where he doesn't want to go. And she's that person. She's that person pushing him reluctantly to the next stage of him maybe coming to grips with what he needs to do to not only, help himself, but to help his team. So.
That's an interesting thing. John, what led you to believe that she's what are the scenes that you're like, okay, yeah, she is the redemption catalyst?
So I think just two scenes really stand out to me. The first is when she gets stabbed by Mal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think before he can brush off the fact that she shot Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the foot,
right?
Because just his relationship with Joseph's character is a little bit different. He can brush off the fact that she betrayed him because that's him. But when Ariadne gets stabbed, I think that's a little bit of initial wake up call to be like, oh crap, there is something seriously wrong in my head. Because he's even more serious about not knowing the layouts, not knowing everything like that. So I think that's one scene, and then the other set of scenes is it's in quick succession after each other. But when they're in that elevator, and he comes after her instead of she ditches him in the middle of his memory that he's stuck in now. She ditches him. She goes down, and he comes after her. He would not have pulled himself out of that memory if it wasn't for having to go get Ariadne. And I think that conscious effort of pulling himself away from Mal and her memory to go help someone else, to go help Ariadne, that's kind of the catalyst for driving the redemption arc with her character.
Okay.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way. That's very cool, man.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that I think sometimes gets not dismissed, but just not examined to that level of detail. Because she is the audience insert, and it's easy to leave it at that. But I think Nolan is talented enough that she played multiple parts in here, and this was one of the more subtle but more important ones, I think.
Awesome. I like that. I would have never thought of it because, in the classic, heist movie, the architect, which is what she is, like in classic heist movies, that's not a normal arc for the architect to go into. They're just that guy that's supposed to come up with the plans and make it happen and stuff like that. And she's definitely more than that in this movie.
She's not just the gun guy.
I'm the gun guy.
No, that's Joseph Gordon-Levitt in this movie. Or
no, I was about to say it's Ames. It's Tom Hardy.
It's Tom Hardy.
Comes out with that grenade launcher. So
He's
gotta
great.
Think bigger, honey.
Yeah, I love his character in this. That's great.
Yeah, he does such a good job. I love the swagger, and he didn't have to wear a mask for this, so it's always good to have Tom Hardy without a mask.
Shows how good of an actor he is. I mean, without masks.
You got Mad Max, you got Batman.
Mad Max was so good.
He was fantastic.
So one of the parts I wanted to talk about was there's not really a throwaway line, but there's a line really late in the movie, I think when they're in limbo and they're talking with Mal, and she's trying to convince him that this is already that reality is so slippery that there's no way for Cobb to know that he is ever real. Like, he's like, she goes, you're something along the lines of, you really think that, traveling the world and being stalked by, faceless corporations and everything else like that is real. Like that whole setup was so clever because if you think about it, it gets you thinking about the entire movie that way. You get to start going, okay, wait a minute. You've been told, like the director and the writer are they the same person? Did he write and direct it?
I believe he did.
I believe he did with his brother, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I think he did.
So
with his brother too.
they've set it. Yeah, they've set it up to. They've given you all these facts, supposedly how this world works, right? And they've set up, what is the top level and then how deep it can go and what limbo is and everything else like that. But the whole thing is called into question. It's called into question by the ending, of course, and I'm sure we'll get to talking about the ending, the very last scene. But it's also called into question throughout the movie. It's like, there's all these rules, but he's breaking these rules anyway. And on top of that, we're not sure. Like, can you ever be sure about anything they tell you in the movie that is real?
I've thought about that.
Yeah,
before.
it's insidious. I love the insidious nature of that remark, because it does make you question the movie, and you talk about the ending, and I think now is as good a time as any to talk about that ending, because I think that's the initial seed that gets planted for you to end up questioning the ending, and if not, you fall on the other side of the spectrum where you choose to believe what you believe and be like, well, it might be this, it might be that. Well, I'm just going to believe that it all ended happily. He got to see his kids, and the ending of the movie is he's not in a dream. That's what I'm going to believe. And so it's almost like Miles talking to you at your final choice. It's like, is this reality? How can you tell? And how do you know whether or not this crazy story is real, even in the universe of this film?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, that scene, that was actually one of the last scenes I watched before I came to do the podcast. And it jumped out at me as well, Crit. Is this a dream? Is it real? Is all of this like spy stuff that he's doing, is it real? It's kind of somebody might dream of this.
Well, it's kind of this, it's a high level, or like, it's not a very deep level, but it brings up the idea of philosophical skepticism or solipsism. This idea that people around you are just figments of your own imagination. You're a brain in the vat or something like that is the normal situation. It's like, the normal way that, kind of everybody talks about this stuff. And in a sense, that's kind of what they're alluding to, is this entire elaborate scenario, the entire 2 hour, 30-minute plus runtime, is just watching a guy go crazy, essentially, just make up scenarios that, feed into his ego and his need and his importance and his trauma. And at the end, possibly he just accepts the reality that is, the one with his kids over the one with Mal. Yeah.
So what do you think? How do you think the ending is too?
Are you talking to me or Crit? Sorry.
I was talking to Crit. I was just teasing.
To me?
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care about whether or not he is in reality or not. Like, I don't think it matters to the story per se. Like, it doesn't drive everything else like that. It's literally a man deciding that this is the reality he's going to deal with. And in some sense, that's kind of what we all do. You shut out certain parts and, kind of walk away from certain situations and stuff like that, and try to put yourself in a place, try to architect your future so that you are, less trauma, more happy, whatever, future plans you want. And he decides at the end that that's what he wants, is, kind of the ending that he got. Because there's a lot of things about that ending that are, even in movie worlds, is extremely suspicious. Like, why does, what's the old professor?
Michael Caine?
I can't remember his name. Yeah, Michael Caine's character. I can't remember the name of the character. But anyway, why is Michael Caine's character waiting for him at the airport? Like, why him? Wasn't he in Europe as a professor? Why was he in, and the kids haven't aged at all. So how long was he on the run? How long was he outside of the thing? So there's so many
questions.
aspects of that ending that just are supposed to leave a giant question mark.
Well,
and that, for me, that's okay. That I like leaving it unanswered, in like this is the answer. It's obvious that he's still in a level, and then everything in the movie was totally made up, was totally a subconscious, thing, or he made it back to actual reality, whatever that is. and it's a happy ending. Like I don't.
Yep.
I don't care if there's an answer there.
And then
I think it's just a really cool idea to kind of leave it there.
It creates lore in the film and hidden lore. So, like, for example, if all of them have totems, right? Why does Cobb use his dead wife's totem? So does that not mean he has his own totem somewhere?
Well, even totems, why would totems work? Like, I understand
exactly.
I understand the principle of why a totem would work, the way they explained it. But again, if this entire thing is in his head,
it's not going to matter.
The totems themselves don't matter.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, he can know he's not in someone else's dream, but that's the extent of what he can know by using a totem.
Maybe.
Because if it's his own head, unless somebody obviously unless they knew exactly how his totem worked, then he could still be in someone else's dream. But
the whole problem with Inception as a concept is they're saying that very difficult concepts are hard to incept. You need to. They're telling you, the audience, that this is the thing, but there's nothing to back that up. There's nothing to say that his idea of what that top would do, therefore showing him that he is in, the dreamer or not in the dream or something like that, would work the way it works. Why wouldn't they just tell him, well, that's just how that top works? And he's like, oh, okay, then I must not be in the dream if it works correctly. It's like, well, you can still be in the dream, and it works the way you expect it to. That's not really it doesn't really rule out that system. So
I think that's a sign of a good film, that we can have this conversation
on
one single little part of it.
Yeah.
Because if it was a crappy film, we wouldn't want to have this conversation, and B, it would be so one-sided.
Well, I'd like to refine that a little bit. I'll say that the reason it's a good film is because it is a philosophical concept that people talk about and sit around in the dorm rooms and wax philosophical about. But I think that's where the interesting things, the thought experiments, come from that get you thinking about it. I think the reason why it's a good film is because it is executed so well. Like, the execution, the idea itself isn't novel, I don't think. The way they house it with the talent that they have in the actors, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. They cut it short, and I really want to know why they cut it short. But every time they show DiCaprio's performance of watching her jump off, like, I feel it. That's visceral, right? And they cut it off at the same time when they show it twice, but it's still interesting. Like, it's still, you can imagine him as an actor getting ready to do that scene, and what he has to build to create that level of, like, devastation, and I believe it. And that is amazing. So, like I said, the talent, and that's just one example, the talent's amazing. The writing is very well done. And to explain that kind of concept in the way they did was, especially with the practical effects and these computer effects, the way they pulled it together makes it a great movie. Like, it's a popcorn movie, but it's a great movie. I think the conversation that we have because of that movie, I think, is more carried by the philosophical implications that the movie is using than it is in the movie itself and how it was done. Because I think you could have this conversation without ever watching that movie. Obviously, people have, so it's not it's a really, really old concept. It's just the first time we've seen it employed this way in this type of media with this budget and this level of talent.
I can see that,
which makes it amazing. I think.
That's a good point.
I can see that.
I wanted to kind of go back to something that you said earlier about the end of the movie, Crit, that intrigued me, and that was it's something that I feel like I've even done before in my life, and that's, you mentioned how it doesn't matter whether he's in the real world or if he's in the dream. It's that he has decided, and it's evident that he's decided by just letting his totem spin as he walks off to his kids, that this is the reality that he's going to live in.
Right.
And we do that. I know I've done that in my own life. I know that, I have, when I've had, hard times, like when my parents split or, things like that, or we had to move, to a place that we didn't want to move to, we all shut those things out that we don't want to be a part of. We don't want to intrude in on our happiness. We kind of go into our own holes. My own hole would have been, his was his kids at that time, you know. He wanted to be with his kids. He was shutting out. It didn't matter what the rest of it was. That's all he cared about was, you know, growing up with his kids. Mine at the time, you know, when I was a 12-year-old kid, was playing Final Fantasy or Mario or listening to rock music. I mean, that was my getaway. That was the thing that I wanted to do to get away from the world. And, you know, and we all do it. And yet he's showing it in such a different way. And I think he's just pointing out that, you know, this is part of that human condition of it doesn't matter. As long as at this moment we're okay mentally, physically, and that maybe this is the point that this will help us heal so that we maybe can move on or maybe come to reality, you know, a set reality, whatever that is. And I you know, that's one of those things, again, like you're talking about the ending, that's one of those things that there's so many different ways you can look at this ending. Because for the longest time, I'm just like, well, you never see the totem fall.
Right.
He's in the dream. But, you know, the more and more I've thought about it, I don't know. And the more and more I've thought about it, I don't care either.
Yeah, I don't know if it matters. Like, I think the interesting choice that the protagonist makes is, this is the reality. I'm going to accept this reality and move forward, right? Like, I'm going to heal. I'm going to do whatever else like that. I'm going to stop chasing the past and my regret and move forward. Now, you know, they could say for the sake of the children, for the sake of, you know, things like that. But I'm not sure that's can be held true in this situation. Like, if you're questioning your own existence, you know, your own reality, and you can't get rid of that. But that's kind of, you know, one of the underlying points, maybe not even underlying, maybe one of the more explicit points of the movie is these ideas, once you have them, if you truly embody them, you know, if they're truly in your head and you truly believe them, it's basically impossible to get rid of them. So if you ever question your reality and you're like, I'm not sure if this is real, is this all a dream? Should I wake up from it? You know, how do I do that? And things like that. But this is, you know, choosing to live what's in front of you is still a choice to reject that idea, even if the idea is still there, right? And that's an interesting, I don't know if it's necessarily an adult choice per se, but it feels like it might be. Like, it might be a thing that adults have to choose to do. Like, sooner or later, you don't really maybe abandon your dreams. People don't like saying that because they're like, you know, you should never abandon. You should go out there and do what you dream to do, and that's, you know, how you make the world better and make your life better or whatever else like that. But I think at a certain point in time, all adults kind of look around and go, well, these are the cards that I have, you know, and you know, lottery dreams aren't worth, you know, spending a ton of time on. Like, if that happens, great, but if it doesn't, I need to deal with what I have in front of me right now. And I feel like that's kind of what the end of the movie is, you may be saying, you know, it's like he's choosing this reality and he's making that choice, maybe for selfish reasons, like, you know, that type of thing, but he's still moving forward, even if he's still within the dream, because he's forgiving himself and he's getting rid of that regret, and he's moving into other futures, not futures where he's, you know, trying to resurrect past, you know.
Have you guys ever heard the angle that he's dead at the end of this? That the whole movie he's been dead, and this is like a redemption of him going throughout life up until the end where he's redeemed himself? This is just a theory.
I have not heard that. I have not heard that. I'd be interested in the theory because I don't see it myself, but maybe there's probably stuff I'm not seeing based on that.
And I don't know if I totally see this yet. A lot of people say at the very end he's dead.
It feels
and
like
he's going off to heaven. Yeah, I did too. I don't give any. I just thought, I mean,
maybe I could see
thing.
It the way it's shot at the end. You know, it's
Yeah.
all very washed in glow and everything else like that. I could see how you might, from just
Interpret that.
just from the way the film is shot, you maybe could interpret that. But I don't think anything else in the movie really talks towards that. I mean, I guess if you're thinking
so
limbo
either.
is hell, and then, you know, reality, quote unquote, the last reality he ends up in is heaven, then there's a little bit of like descending and ascending that's happening. But I think John's right. I think it's a little bit of a stretch, unless there's something I'm missing from that theory.
No, I thought so too. I just thought it was interesting. I thought I'd throw it in there. I don't have any merit in it myself.
It sounds like I've seen people do this before. They did this with the Matrix and stuff like that. It's like they have they want a religious intent, and so they project a religious intent, and they, and that type of thing. And that's fine. There are a lot of religious intents in art, so it's not like it's not there, but sometimes, yeah, it can be a bit of a stretch.
No, I agree. I just thought it was interesting. When I was doing research for this, I came across it. I'm like, that's something I've never thought of before.
No, yeah. Like I said, if someone who believed that or like had strong evidence of that, I'd love to hear it, because I could definitely be missing parts of that movie that point to it. It's just, if it's a theory, that it has to encompass the whole movie. It can't just encompass.
The thing I read wasn't that it encompassed the entire movie. They just said it was more towards the end of it once he comes off the plane.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know if you ignore the entire piece of the art for a small piece of it and go, and make a conclusion. But
no, I agree.
It's art. It's meant to be interpreted by the audience. So I can't say it's wrong. I just don't see it myself.
I interpret it better of, he's alive. What state of being alive is he in?
Right.
Alive or awake?
He could.
Are we alive
like those guys in Morocco that are, doing the shared dream 40 hours, 40 hours.
I always wondered why they showed that, why they pointed that out. That was such a big plot point.
Well, because
because I know he says later he can't dream anymore. That's why he dreams. That's why Ariadne finds him, late at night dreaming about Maul. He can't dream on his own anymore because of all that.
Right. Which again is a fact that's given to you that may or may not be true.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's an interesting, I think it's there to plant the seed specifically that there are people that choose the dream over reality, like explicitly choose the dream over reality. And whether or not people are actually doing that, or that's Cobb's subconscious, basically talking to himself about the possible situation that he's in, that he prefers this dream of him running around the world, being chased and doing important things, as preferred to mundane reality. Right. And that's kind of what those people are escaping from, is mundane reality for the dream reality, the dreams, the shared dream.
Well, I mean, I've always thought of, it made me think more of into the idea of, is he, which one did he pick? Just what you just said, which one did he pick? I mean,
right.
And from what we've been just talking about, going off what we have kind of voiced to what we feel like the end was, it was, he chose to, possibly, if he's still in the dream, he chose to stay in the dream.
Well,
so
he doesn't
be with his kids.
Yeah. I think he doesn't know. Like, just like we don't know.
Yeah.
Since the whole brain of that thing is that sense, if you think that all thought and sensation are just electrical signals that the brain receives, like, you can kind of prove that you exist, but you can't really prove that anybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's kind of left with that at the end of the movie of, does he fixate on this idea of reality? Basically, the idea that he supposedly incepted his wife with. That's the thing. Like, he's choosing to not worry about that idea and to move on. And he could be moving on in reality, real reality, or he could be moving on in one level of the dream and just saying, heck with it. I'm doing this. If this is not real and I find evidence that it's not real, then I'll deal with it then. But at this point in time, I'm tired. Yeah, tired of there's other experiences that I can have. If I just
maybe if I live throughout this and I'm happy with this, maybe someday I will wake up like those other guys did that have been dreaming for forever. And I'll deal with it at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly possible. So, I mean, it's, and again, this is more heavy lifting from the philosophical arguments that have already been had throughout, human history about this. But I think the realization of it in this movie is pretty fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I agree. This whole movie just blows my mind on how wonderful it is that they've taken all these ideas and just kind of meshed them together and just come out with such a wonderful show, that a thought-provoking movie. Stuff like that has not only action, a whole bunch of action in it, suspense, thrills, but it's also thought-provoking.
Humorous moments.
Oh yeah.
Good. I mean, we watched Heat the other day, and that's a really long movie. And there were definitely parts of it that I was like, this is a long movie, and I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
There were only a few parts within this movie, and mostly because I'd seen it before, that I was just like, okay, how long is this movie? I think it was like, maybe the 2 hour 10 mark, where I was like, wait, how long have I been sitting here watching this movie? This is a long movie. But I didn't feel it for, over 2 hours. And that's a real testament to the entertainment value and kind of the pacing of such a long movie.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of Christopher Nolan's movies are that way.
Yeah, that's
or
true.
They're super long, like Interstellar, for example. There's times in that where I'm just like, I'm enjoying it so much that I don't know how much time's gone by. I remember watching the first time it was that way. It's kind of like watching Blade Runner 2049, same idea.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so here's a question for both of you then. Out of the Nolan movies, where would you rank this?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Is this high or is this low? Like, do you like the other ones better?
This is high.
This is high for me as well.
Like, what's above it?
Not much.
Maybe Interstellar. Oh, Memento. God.
Memento is close.
Right.
I still like. I think I like this more than Memento, but only by a little bit. Because Memento is a different genre. I mean, completely in the sense
it's
of
a different kind of film, but it's done so well. I have another show about that.
Interstellar and this one kind of are really close to me. They're almost like neck and neck. I have a hard time doing one or the other. If I had to, I probably put Inception over Interstellar, only by slightly. And then I would probably do Memento, and then I would probably do
the Batman trilogy or
Batman, yeah. And I would probably go, if I had to go Batman, I would have to go Dark Knight, and then Batman Begins, and then the last one.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much. I feel like that's almost universal ranking on that.
Really?
One.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Dark Knight is just so rewatchable and so good.
I've rewatched Batman Begins a lot. I really like that movie.
So, to answer my own question, because I guess.
Yeah, we want to hear what you want to say.
Yeah.
Where would you do? Because I know you have definitely a different perspectives than I do.
Well, I there's something about Interstellar that I just like so much and some of that's the music score, some of that's the kind of the scope of it and stuff like that. That one kind of really does take my number one, and then I do the Dark Knight, and then I do Interstellar, and that's only because and it's really just from entertainment value. Like I'm like, when I think about rewatching movies, that would be the order I would watch. If I had to like prioritize time or something like that around watching them, I'd watch them in that order.
I'm actually shocked because I thought Memento would be in one of those top three.
I like Memento, and I like Memento like it's from obviously from the execution standpoint and the story it's trying to tell and the way it puts the audience in the protagonist's mindset, which is that's got to be really hard to do. But it's not a great rewatch. Like I feel like I take that back. There are aspects of it that are great rewatch intellectually, but it's not like an entertaining rewatch. Like, I'm not like
I feel
yeah. I'm not like feeling that sense of amazement over again. I'm more picking apart everything and trying to find those types of things. And it's not the same type of enjoyment of watching the docking scene in Interstellar any of the screen time of the Joker.
The way you put that, dude, I'd even put Memento, I think, even lower than I think I did. Like, I think I'd put it towards the last, because you're right. I'd rather watch all of those other ones before I'd watch Memento.
Yeah. And I think Memento's great.
It's fantastic.
It's worth every praise it gets.
Oh yeah.
I'm just not running out to see it again, that type of thing.
I think it's a movie that everybody should see at least once. And then that's probably all they'll want to see after that. It'll be like, awesome! And then, I'm good.
Well,
good.
gentlemen, that is all my notes.
Cool.
I'm out. I'm trying to drag up more, but every time I watch this film,
I've got one more.
Drains me.
I've got one more. I just wanted to point out that at the very end, and that I thought it was interesting how the tools he used to kind of ramp up the tension in the movie. That was the only thing I wanted to point out. I thought it was interesting how in all the movie that they pointed out that you can kill yourself to leave. And then as they go into the last dream, they're like, yeah, you can't do this anymore, guys.
Because of the sedative, yeah.
Because of the sedative and just ratchets it up.
Right.
I just think the tools he uses to ratchet up things are quite interesting in this movie.
Yeah, I think you bring that up, and it reminds me of Hitchcock's ticking bomb explanation of tension in film. Mm-hmm. And it's, I can't, I'm probably going to get this so wrong. But the idea is that, there's a ticking bomb under the table with two people, and you show the ticking bomb, neither of the people sitting at the table know about it, but you show the audience it through the camera. So the audience knows about it, but the people don't. And just the audience knowing that the bomb is there and ticking ratchets up that intensity like crazy. And it feels like the way they did the kicks to move back through the levels and stuff like that was just the ticking bomb, kind of not refactored, in a fractal pattern. It basically just keeps recursing down. And they get to do the ticking bomb, ticking down to zero over and over and over again throughout the movie to keep ratcheting up the tension even more. They're like, oh, we missed the first kick, but there'll be a second one when the van hits. And so because of that, we have to, and it's it's amazing to me that in a film that big, with that big of a budget, a major Hollywood blockbuster film, that they took the time to do that type of thing. That's just, fighting for your, I totally get that the suits at the studio would be like, no one's going to get this, and this is too difficult. And I'm like, no, this isn't too difficult. Stop thinking of us as idiots and, let the director challenge us. Because this isn't that challenging, but it is very entertaining. And
there's been many movies where they've dumbed down, it makes it less interesting because they've dumbed it down.
Yeah.
Lots of TV shows and things like that.
Yeah.
So, well, good. I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was very interesting because, yeah, you're right. And I didn't even think about that point of them using the kicks also to build tension and using the, how much time do you have to get to the next tick, or how long he, is going to drop, how long it's going to take that van to drop, and how much they have in the third level to, do before that thing hits the water. And
yeah, that's great.
It's just awesome. So,
and we could go on and on about this, but
absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a good. I just thought that was amazing. And, that was some great conversation, guys. I appreciate it. I love these deeper movies that lets us deep dive into it a little bit more and really, philosophize about it. Did I just say that word right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, all right. Is that everything else? Everybody's good now?
Yep.
Should we move on to our movie for next week?
Sounds good.
All right, Crit. That's up to you, buddy.
All right.
Three movies you have for us for next week?
All right. So we're still on heist movies.
Yes.
And here are my 3 hidden picks.
I am excited.
First one, stealing the opportunity to do justice.
Okay.
Next one, stealing the best damn ship in the sea.
Okay.
And the third one, stealing the weed, cash, and guns despite terrible circumstances.
I don't know. I'm kind of thinking the boat one. Number 2,
I like the
John?
first one.
What was that one?
Stealing the opportunity to do justice.
I'm good with the boat if that's what you want, Josh.
I don't want to put my hand on the scale. So
yeah, tell us which one's better, Crit.
Yeah, I definitely have my pick. That actually, I'm a little torn. I like all three of them. So,
All right, let's go to the first one. I'm good with the first one too.
wait, are you doing? So, are
What?
you both voting the first one, or are you both voting the ship?
The
Because
first one.
John went back and forth.
I said I would go with whatever Josh decided.
Oh, okay. All right, the first one then. Interesting. So the other two, because it's the way we usually do it, stealing the best damn ship in the sea is Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Oh, that is a good one.
It is a great one.
That's a great movie.
All right. Stealing the weed, cash, and guns despite terrible circumstances is Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Oh, damn it. I've never seen that movie.
Oof, it's a good one. Yeah. The one you picked, stealing the opportunity to do justice, is The Fury of a Patient Man.
Oh,
I don't know that one at all.
Yeah, I think you'll like it a lot. It's a 2016 movie. It is you probably wouldn't have seen it. It's a Spanish movie.
no, I haven't seen it. It
yeah.
looks really good though.
Yeah.
What name? Say it one more time. What's the name?
The name of it is The Fury of a Patient Man.
It's a Spanish film.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch it.
Yeah. Bring it on, man. I love it that I'm seeing movies that I've never seen before. I'm excited to watch it.
I'm kind of bummed you didn't throw Hell or High Water in there. To be
I
honest.
didn't want to do it again after you did it last week. So
Oh, I would have loved it.
I know.
I'm bummed we didn't get to do that one.
I think that's why you picked number one, because you thought it was going to be that one, huh?
I had, out of all of them, that was
Yeah.
the closest one, and I'm like,
Right.
well, if he did it, this will be the best bet.
Right.
But it also sounded better than the weed one. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I have had bad experiences with weed, so we're
I'm
gonna
actually
avoid
really happy that we picked number one, because I've actually already, of the three movies, I hadn't seen two of them, and this is one of the two I hadn't seen. The second one was the only one I had seen before.
Yeah. I figured that Pirates of the Caribbean was kind of a stretch as a heist movie. I mean, it is, but I thought, but I was reminded of it the other day, and I was like, oh, it'd be interesting to talk about, but we can do it another time. And the same thing with Hell or High Water.
Yeah,
we've got
Westerns
coming up at some point in time
That's next month.
And that is probably going to make somebody's list in there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm excited for this pick.
That's awesome and stuff.
All right,
and let's finish it up. And as always, may you be excellent to each other and live long and prosper from all of us here at the House of Nerd. Good night.
Thanks for watching. For more nerdy awesomeness, please like and subscribe and check out our other nerdy videos.